Here with a new episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Sammy Hagar, and I've had some requests to feature some of Sammy Hagar's music. Definitely a legendary rock musician, and Sammy's career started somewhere around 1972. A year later, he joined forces with Ronnie Montrose and joined the band Montrose, and appears on those two important Montrose albums. That self-titled debut is a banger of a classic rock album. That's a legendary record. And then he started a solo career, eventually hooked up with Van Halen, and eventually hooked up with Satriani, and they formed Chickenfoot. You know, definitely a legendary musician, whether it's solo or he's working with a band. And he's still active. He's very active. And there's something about Sammy. I've always liked him ever since I was a kid in high school. I Can't Drive 55 and, you know, Only One Way to Rock and some of those songs. And they rocked. You know, it definitely perked up my ears. And then the next thing I knew, he was working with Van Halen. So I was totally a fan by then. But anyway, here we go. And mainly because Sammy's career goes all the way back to the early 70s, he's worked with a whole bunch of different musicians, different guitarists and drummers and bass players and keyboardists and stuff. And I'm going to share an image here of just guitarists, you know, that he's worked with in his career. Whether it's a band situation or a solo project, it might be like a guest appearance in the studio or something. But keep in mind, you know, Sammy's the voice of 2 Montrose albums, 4 Van Halen albums, and 2 Chickenfoot albums on top of his solo material. But check out this image with some of the guitarists he's worked with in his lengthy career. And speaking of Sammy's solo albums, from 1977 until 1984, he had a 6-string secret weapon in his band, and that's Gary Pihl, definitely a very overlooked and kind of lesser-known guitarist. He definitely worked with Sammy on all those, you know, solo albums from 77 to 84. And I think in the mid-80s, he joined forces with Boston. And he's been the second guitarist in Boston since Third Stage. So the music and chord-based examples in this episode came from 5 Sammy Hagar-related albums, and that includes his solo releases, and then also the HSAS project with Neal Schon from Journey. And they only had 1 album, Through the Night, and that's a banger of an album, just like the Montrose album. But there's an assortment here. There's no Van Halen and there's no Montrose, because I have featured Van Halen and Montrose here on my channel. We're mainly just looking at, you know, Sammy Hagar, and then technically Sammy Hagar with Neal Schon. Anyway, here we go. With the opening, that's the song All American from Sammy's first solo album, 9 on a 10 scale, and it's this rowdy rock out riff like this. Something like that. So it's an E, and we're doing this big slide off this B note there in the beginning. And then you're basically just kind of banging this E5 and then rolling that minor to major third, that G to G sharp. And you're basically, you know, grabbing that E power chord, that G to G sharp to the E octave right there. And then E, D, C sharp, D, C sharp to B. just single notes there. And that second time, you're just going to do that D, C sharp, and then end on that D. And you're just kind of alternating between those two riffs. Like that. That's the intro, and then the verse, and then eventually it moves to A, and you've got... So an A power chord, and then you're doing the C to C sharp, like a similar move, but in A. Right there, you're going to move into that that C to C sharp to that E note, and then you're going to grab that G, like the flat 7. And do that A power chord again. And you got this A, and then G, F sharp to E. Right? And remember that little fill right there, because we're going to have a variation of that in just a second. It goes back to E. Right there, go back to A. And then right here, it's like quarter note triplets. And then right back to E. And I love that kind of classic, sound. It definitely has like a phase effect and stuff, just rocking out. Cool tune. Next up's the song I'll Fall in Love Again from the album Standing Hampton. This is definitely one of my favorite solo songs from Sammy Hagar, like this. Basically all these slash chords right against that A, that open A string. So you're basically doing a D over A like that. Think of that like 70s kind of chord form, inversion. D over A to A like that. And then just start like pedaling that open A string. And you're going to basically go from that A to a G over A up there, just like the D over A, but we're going to move up to the 7th fret, with your index finger like that. And that A up to that G over A. Keep playing that open A, and that G over A to D over A right there. And you're going to kind of play that D over A rhythmically with the vocal melody like that. And back to that A, pedal that open A string. And then do all that again. Next up's the song Baby's on Fire. This is also from the album Standing Hampton, and it also features the slash chords and implied partial chords, like this. Like that, pretty basic, but we're going to start with this A major chord and then just start pedaling that open A string. So that A major, a couple hits on that open A, and then a D over A, which is the same D over A that we had in I'll Fall in Love Again just a second ago. And we're also going to hit that G over A that we had previously too, but like this. And then do that G over A, and then go back to that D over A, and that's it. Really simple. And then do it again. And do it again. Go ahead and do it one more time. And then eventually eventually you do this C, B to an A power chord. It kind of takes you into the verse. Really simple example, but once again, those slash chords and partial chords, those 70s kind of inversions, you know, they pop up in Sammy's music for sure. Next up's the song Reckless. This came from Sammy's album Musical Chairs, and it's this rowdy rock out riff like this. Something like that. So it basically starts with this open E. Think like communication breakdown gone crazy, like that. And then it's just partial chords, like a partial E minor 7, that 12th fret bar on the D and the G string, and then E sus4 implied, you know, the 14th fret there on the D and the G, like that. And do that again, do the 12th fret, and then you're going to bend that double stop on the 14th fret the second time, which is really weird. Like that, and just bend that double stop. I'm just kind of pulling it to the floor. Do it again. And the hits are different like the last time. And then right there after those last two hits, go to an A power chord right there in open position. And grab that single G back into the A power chord, and you're going to let that ring. And then you've got the C, B, open A to B. And after that, it goes right back into that E riff. Next up, the song Top of the Rock. This came from the HSAS album Through the Fire, and this is actually Neal Schon on guitar. I'm pretty sure Neal played all the guitar on that album, so there's no Sammy riffs here, but Neal Schon's definitely a badass guitarist, and this song's like this. Pretty short and sweet and kind of simple, but it's interesting like what Neal's doing with the chords here, because you're doing this. Right, there's 3 chords there and they all look kind of similar. They're definitely in the same neighborhood right there. So that's going to function like a D6, that D note with the fretted B. And then you're going to add this F sharp note, and that's like part of a B5, like B5 over F sharp. And then you're going to move that F sharp back to E, and now that's an E5 power chord. Like that. So it's 3 chords, but they're all neighbors right there next door to each other. Right? So that D6, B5 over F sharp to E5, that's the first like little pass of chords. And then do the exact same thing on the next set of strings lower. Now you're going to basically start with this A6, and then it's an F sharp 5 over C sharp, and then right there it's just basically a B5 power chord. Right? So the same movement, but just down a set of strings. Like that. And you just basically kind of do that start and stop riff. And you hear this kind of like scratch before the chords come in sometimes. You know, something like that. And then he definitely starts mute, you know, like mute strumming and scratching between the chords after that. You know, something like that. Interesting riff. Really simple. But I like those kind of twisted, you know, triads and chords and partial chords, just like that. Cool stuff. Now, speaking of cool chord riffs, Neal Schon and that HSAS album, this is the song Animation from Through the Fire, and there's a delay effect happening, which is really cool, and some harmonics, like this. Like that. So it's really short and sweet and kind of basic, but it's interesting. It's different. And he's basically chugging, like this palm muted E5, like that. And then immediately after that, he hits a harmonic on the 5th fret on the A and the D string. Right? Like that. So it's a chord kind of muffled and then that harmonic. But then you're also hearing like those delay repeats, right? Like that. So that's interesting. It's like this aggressive, abrasive, riff where it's muted chord and then harmonics. And then you're gonna bang out this F sharp 7 sus4 like that. Right? So think of like a B sus4 if you want to, but it's F sharp 7. Like that. And then do that kind of muted chord harmonic thing again. Really unusual and different riff, but I like it. Last but not least is the song Swept Away. This came from Sammy's album VOA, and this features stacked power chords, which for 1984 was kind of unusual, like this. Something like that. So it's an E5 right there. And then answer that with a C5 over G, that big stacked C5 power chord. Strum that and then shift slide it into a D5 over A, like that. And then strum that D5 over A again, like that. And then do that again. But then the second time you're going to end on that A power chord down there. So the first pass, second pass, third pass, and then the last time here you're going to do, and he's doing like these open string pull-offs, that 7th, the 5th, and then the open G, 7th, the 5th, open D, 7th, the 5th, open A. And then just smear this C note into an A power chord. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the chords of Sammy Hagar, and I definitely had requests, to feature Sammy Hagar's music, but then it made me feel really good to notice requests for Gary Pihl, like they were specifically asking for some of his music and ideas. And that made me feel good, because definitely he's a lesser-known guitarist. A lot of people don't realize he's the player that worked with Sammy, back in the day through all those albums and hits. I Can't Drive 55 and Only One Way to Rock and some of that stuff. Definitely. And Sammy Hagar is a legendary rock musician. I mean, if you take his solo material away and just look at some of the people he's worked with, Ronnie Montrose, Edward Van Halen, Joe Satriani, Billy Gibbons and Billy Duffy and all these greats, where it's like, wow, he's worked with rock and roll royalty and toured and been active, basically since 1972, which is really impressive. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.